Another interesting discussion there, and with that we now march ahead, because we all realize that when it comes to new age ventures in the Gulf, we know that it's exploding, powered by digitization and shifting consumer habits for that matter. And India's startup ecosystem has risen to global top 3, exploring talent, or for that matter innovation at scale. So this is where we will be focusing around capital, around talent and ideas, and how they're all moving faster than ever before between the two regions. So where do the LPs see the next big VC wins in the corridor? And how will the GPs expand their mandate to make India an integral part of the playbook? We'll get those answers coming from our speakers. Looks like we have set the stage a bit, and we're about to invite our speakers on stage. But let me tell you, this time we'll have Aman Malik, Senior Editor, VCCircle, who will be spearheading the panel discussion. All right, so we are in the able hands of Aman to sort of spearhead this discussion. But that being said, let's also quickly invite our speakers. However, the seating looks very one-sided, but the discussion will not. So we'll get on board our speakers really quick on stage. I'm going to get a quick cue from my team, if you're all set, after the aesthetics have been handled on stage, because they're primary as well to ensure the discussion is good. Yes, another minute. All right, we'll just take a couple of seconds. But we've got some really interesting names, incredible names joining us for this discussion as well. As I'd mentioned earlier, well, we're looking at how capital, talent, or for that matter, ideas, innovation for that matter as well, how between these two regions, the pace at which it's moving ahead, which is why it's only befitting that we have this discussion right now and hear it from both ends of the spectrum. So let's do that. Aman will be spearheading the session, and let me go ahead and also invite our speakers right up on stage. All right, so with that, let me go ahead and invite our speakers. A bit of curiosity that we managed to build up there, so let's get those insights coming. First up, I'd like to please invite on stage His Excellency Maher Al Kaabi, Chairperson Al Sarkar Group. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to please invite you to come on the dais. I'd like to further invite Arif Mohammed Al Alawi, Chief Executive Officer, Dubai Cultivate. And we also have with us Anirudh A. Damani, Director, Artha India Holdings. This is all about the cross-border startup opportunity. Can we also start it up with a round of applause to welcome our speakers? We managed to build that up a little, so let's now go ahead and deep dive into these very interesting insights coming your way. And I'm going to hand over the proceedings to Aman. Aman, over to you.
Thank you very much. Since we've had a longish introductory session, let's begin without much ado. I will start off with Mr. Maher Al Kaabi. We've been having a lot of very nice discussions backstage, and that sort of sets the stage up for this discussion here. Mr. Maher, you've been doing a lot of mentoring, is what one hears, for Indian businessmen who are probably looking to move, their businesses, startup founders, etc. Relocating in part to this geography here. Could you sort of, and this is under the CEPA Startup Series initiative, can you sort of talk to our audience a little bit about that and how far you've come through this process, sir?
Sure. First of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. How many of you are familiar with the CEPA agreement? What does it entail? Not many. Okay, great. Just to define that, first of all,
of course,
so it can set the pace in that case. Usually when you do a bilateral trade agreement within countries, it's how do you make sure that trade flows happen smoothly? But they are at very smaller pace. Those are the bilateral trade agreement. Usually bilateral trade agreement takes about a couple of years if things are okay to be signed between two countries. If futuristic, probably a year and so forth. CEPA is like comprehensive economic partnership. It's not about just trade, bilateral trade, but also investment, exchange of services, IP, many things. So we signed the CEPA agreement with India back in June 2022, and I was there in June 2023 with our ministry to go and celebrate that 1 year signing up. Now, usually when you want to sign CEPA, imagine if trade agreement takes a couple of years, the CEPA agreement will take a really long time. But because of the great leadership between both countries, the CEPA agreement was signed in a record time of 4 months. Unimaginable, particularly when you know, thank you. This goes to the leadership, by the way, because they really made it happen. Particularly when you know there are 97,000 tariffs just in Indian market. And to abolish that of 98%, it's really large. We've got about 1,900 tariffs, so relatively very, very small. So the CEPA was to make sure within 5 years we touch a trade between both of us, investment and IP, so forth, about $100 billion. In the first year itself, when we were celebrating, we crossed the $65 billion. That tells you how fast things have moved within government. And the reason we were there, apart from celebrating, we met the Minister Joyesh Payal, so I was speaking over there, is to meet the government official. How do we further permeate whatever we've agreed on the top with all the other government agencies? And I think politically on the side, we were talking with Aman on that, by the way.
Yes.
How can we get that thing happen? So what that has enabled? Some of you heard about UAE-India CEPA series for startups. This happened June of this year, where more than 10,000 startups, Indian startups, entrepreneurs actually applied for this, and they made their pitches across 9 cities within India. And of course, the pitches were all about for them to get to know what UAE ecosystem, startup system requires, what they are. So giving that insight to them, and also for us to learn what is really coming up from the Indian market and where we can invest in a more of conformative manner. So this is what really happened with the series. Of course, these finalists will come to UAE, will be supported over here, they'll understand the ecosystem even furthermore, and then we continue with that.
Fair enough. Mr. Arif, now let me turn to you. Cultivate was created, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, to put, or rather pull high potential startups into Dubai. How far have you succeeded in your mission? That is question number one. And as an addendum to that, to what extent have you managed to get participation of Indian founders in your effort to sort of relocate them to Dubai, sir?
Okay, thank you. So just to give you a little bit background about why Cultivate is, we can say, an investment divest from Dubai SME. Dubai SME is main, we can say, support for startups in Dubai, and they support mainly from logistics and then financing part of it. When we established Dubai Cultivate, it's basically to cater for the other side of it. It's like we want to invest also, not only support or finance companies. And investment also is not only in the local companies, but in the also foreign-owned companies in the UAE. So we started our first fund and during 2019, and we said that let's put the criteria and guidelines for the investment, because we are new and the fund is new, and we know in investment risk over risk. Basically, it's not preferred by the shareholders. So we did our first fund basically to focus on the technology as an attribute with a growth stage. So we don't invest into startups. Anything has a growth, has a revenue, and it has to be like a scalable, has to have an existence in the UAE or have a potential to grow in the UAE. So we don't take over the whole company from that jurisdiction. We ask them to basically part of the company to expand it in the region, because we want to transfer the knowledge, the skills, and and the technology itself. So we did our first fund, $17.5 million, and we deployed into 6 companies. We did different rounds. We supported these companies. And some of them are 2 companies in the mobility, 2 companies in the fintech, and then we have one in a legal side and one in PropTech. So on average, we are doing very well. We can say as an average for the portfolio,
right,
our NAV is like above 30%. But on project by project, some of them we have like a 3x, 4x. So this is in terms of the our success for the first fund. We're creating our second fund, which will be more extended into an earlier stage, like pre-revenue. So 100%, we can say 10% will be pre-revenue and 90% towards a growth stage. And we will add also additional sectors into AI-driven, agentic, health tech, and edutech. So this is from the first part of the question. Second part is so far this is part of the Dubai economy, can say, vision that we want to add more startups into the economy. So our main objective is not only just investing and making money. The higher we can say aim is basically economic. We want to have more companies to contribute into the economy. So we have in 2022 we have collaborated with one of the Indian incubators called India Accelerator through the Dubai SME. So our stage comes later stage. So being programs that was mentioned by Maher, which is CERT, and also incubators. So we come at a later stage. So these incubators and accelerator centers, they are basically deal sourcing for us, one of the deal sourcing.
Right.
So we have one of the companies that falls within our portfolio. Basically started with the 2 from India and 1 from UAE. And we purposely invested in that company because we want something that has an element to extend into India.
Fair enough.
So the company is basically in the UAE, and we expanded that part of that operation into India. So we are doing the SaaS.
Okay.
India, yeah.
And now let me turn to you. As someone and we were just talking backstage, about 25% of your LP base or 20-odd% of your LP base is from this region where we are sitting. Be blunt and tell us, is it tougher to raise money from folks over here, or is it easier to raise money from folks in India?
You promised me the difficult question was going to come last.
I throw curveballs.
No, but good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. See, I think the Indian venture ecosystem, or even in the Indian SME ecosystem, has gone through a world of change. I think we're almost at $750 billion worth of M&A in India over the last 8 years, right? And we've broken records every year, which means there's a record amount of liquidity with Indian families. I think the number of family offices, someone was saying earlier today, went from 53 to 350.
Yes.
I think it's closer to 500.
Okay.
Which means that these family offices are now looking at investing this money back into India, right? And I think, and what we were saying earlier, when I started Fund 1 in 2019, I must have visited the US at least 4 times.
Okay.
Right? I visited this area at least 6 or 7 times, went to Europe a bunch of times. And I had, at least from the US and Europe, I had all of $1 million to show what I raised out of a $30 million fund. Now, in the last 6 months, we started Fund 2. We've already raised 70% of our capital, and 85% of that has come from India. And the check sizes have been at least 5 times larger than the last one. It just tells you the kind of confidence the Indian founders or the Indian entrepreneurs have in their own economy. Right. And the IRRs are compelling. Right. If you look at Indian stock markets, 16% roughly over the last 10 years.
Yes.
Right? So all of these things work in your favor. I think it's much easier, therefore, because the amount of aggression there is in the Indian founders. I was telling you earlier that if you want to raise 100 crore, for your startup or for a fund, just go to Goregaon in Mumbai, go to, you can go to Delhi or you go to Calcutta.
Yes.
Just meet the top 10 family offices over there. You will have your money within the next 15 days.
Right.
That's the speed at which they're operating, right? And we've raised that capital, so I'm telling you that this is definitely happening in front of my eyes. Versus when you come to the Gulf, when you come to maybe the US, multiple meetings, right? And sometimes just to get $5 million check can take 18 months. Versus, when you're an Indian founder, when you're an Indian fund manager, you don't have 18 months, right? There's a monthly cost you're paying. Just go down to these 3 areas, you get a 100 crore check, you're done.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the speed. I think the biggest competitor, and I'll just end with this.
Of course.
To global LPs in India is the Indian LP.
Okay, fair enough. My next question is to both Mr. Maher and Mr. Arif, and could you sort of take turns to answer this? When it comes to Indian businesses, Indian founders, and Indian investors, do people in this part of the world, and please be blunt if you could be, do they trust Indian businesses, Indian businessmen, Indian founders enough? And is there a lack of trust that hinders, fundraising from this part of the world into India, or in your case, calling Indian founders setting up shop in the Gulf region, sir? Either one of you.
I don't think it has to do with Indians starting funds over here or would like to collect funds from here. We're not transactional. We're very much based, when you go to US and you go to Europe, it's transactional. Of course, they're also changing a bit, not because you've only raised $1 million, but they have a different mentality of going on today. So we're very much based on understanding and knowing each other. It's all about building the trust first. So it's absolutely correct. Once you cross that line, then we try to understand what you want to do. Segment, all the things will come later on. First of all, we need to establish trust between you, because a lot of people have taken GCC as a cash pot that you can come in, take cash and go out. Yeah?
Yes.
We've seen that happen. We've also seen a lot of businesses come in over here, they become very transient, i.e. they try to do something and then go away, and then people and family businesses lost money because of that. Despite, of course, trying the trust. So we've kind of powered up the trust to the power 2 to make sure that we really establish the trust first. So usually the barometer is if people start inviting you to their majlises, which is their private gathering they do at their houses, that's mean you establish the trust. And now they're they're willing to introduce you to other family businesses as well, saying, look, we believe in this guy, the product they're offering, the service they're offering are very, very nice. Why didn't you look at it as well? Because we're going to be investing in them. So this is how you start with creating funds. I think that's the key thing part of it.
Fair enough.
Second, if I may add as another point, if you don't mind,
yes.
Is it aligned to what we want to do as a government as well? What do I mean by that? The government is transitioning from becoming a linear economy to circular economy. The government is transitioning from becoming a manual economy to digital economy. Of course, the seed of that happened 30, 40 years ago, but we're accelerating in that. So we sit in a couple of committees whereby we look after these two things, and we're even training our family businesses. So what we're trying to do with the family businesses, which is led by the Ministry of Economy, how do we make sure that the next generation now, they actually adopt what the government wants to do, is coming up with businesses which is in the digital space. Yes, we've done very well in the brick and mortars kind of things, and that may want to continue, but the government want new businesses to be in thing to do with technology. And so whatever the business is coming up now, the second layer for us to check is, are you really aligned to what UAE wants to do or not? So then we go and happily look after that.
Sure. Mr. Arif, yes.
I agree with him. Trust is the most important, we can say, especially in raising capital.
Yes.
Been doing this initially, in the early days, 15 years, I've been doing placing for different banks like GFH, R Capital, Thorough Investment House, stuff. So all of these companies, basically, high net worth individuals, family offices, is a trust, basically who you are. Do they trust you? Do they trust your insights that basically whatever you're providing them, it's also it's appealing for them? Is it meaningful?
Yes.
Does it add value? Is it my appetite? So a lot of other areas that come with this trust that you need to build over time. So I think it's like it's trust when we say it's
fair enough.
In an investment, yeah.
Anirudh, you know, how, like, as an Indian businessman / investor, what can folks like you do or your ilk do to actually build this level of trust so that even in your cap table, the percentage or the fraction of Gulf LPs or Gulf investors actually goes up over time, even as your investment base itself sort of also continues to balloon. Therefore, it goes up both as a factor as well as in absolute terms significantly.
Well, that's a great question, and I think you know, His Excellency said it best, right? That it's all about the relationship in this part of the world. What we are attempting to do now, like we have a space tech company called Agnikul. It's the world's first 3D printed rocket engine company. It's actually launched. It's the only company to have vertically launched its rocket globally, and they did that last year. One of the companies they're working with over here is Space 42, right? And because Agnikul's mission is to launch a rocket from anytime, anywhere. And some of the most exotic and best places to launch are in the GCC, because you have no landmass. You know, if you look at the sea below you, there's no major landmass until the rocket goes suborbital. So we are trying. Now, the challenge is that, you know, when you come to the Gulf, and like you correctly said, sir, that we don't know who to talk to, right? And this is a project supported by InSpace, project supported by ISRO. They are the only company in India to have their private launch pad. And the launch pad is created in a way you can pack that up into a truck and reconstruct it anywhere else in the world. So you can launch on water. They're also recovering the rocket, the world's second company to do it. There's a lot of engineering there. And these guys are extremely, they have Asia's largest 3D printer. It can print a 1 meter long engine without any manual support. We really want them to come to the Gulf, because I think this is exactly where these are the governments that also want access to space. We're all reliant globally either on SpaceX, where 90% of their capacity goes to Starlink, or ISRO, or China, Russia. But, you know, China, Russia, probably not the, you know, sometimes you have challenges with such partners, right? Agnikul is the only company that lets you have your own rocket and you can launch your own satellite. Nobody else needs to go along with you. That's the kind of partnerships we want. These are high engineering companies. Yes. Have we done SaaS? We've done lots of SaaS. You know, a bunch of our companies work with ADCB, EDB as their SaaS partners. We have applied AI, agentic AI companies working here. But I think the real place where, sir, this is going to work is going to be semiconductors, is going to be space tech companies. Indian space tech is exploding at the moment. We just invested in a company building data centers in space. And 5 years ago, we did in India, it was when I invested in Agnikul, my LPs were asking me in India to launch a Diwali rocket, people start fighting over it. And you're investing in a launch company, but look at it where it is today, right? And I think there is that level of connection that could happen in higher engineering stuff, and not just, hey, let's export Indian snacks over here, or let's just do SaaS. We can do a lot more within these two countries. I think we just need to find the right platforms to communicate and to take Indian space tech, Indian deep tech global. And it's happening right now in front of you.
Okay, my next question is again to the two gentlemen, Mr. Maher and Mr. Arif. What can the governments of both India as well as the UAE or the Gulf region in particular, and I mean the UAE or the 2 or 3 big emirates within the UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, etc., but also governments of Qatar, Bahrain, which is your home country, sir, as you mentioned. What can, at the governmental level, what can the governments do to actually encourage more cross-pollination when it comes to both investments as well as founders relocating, Indian founders of startups relocating to this geography over here? So either one of you can take the question, if you will, and then the other one can take.
Okay, so in the Gulf, there are, I mean, different regimes. We can say different services are provided, and now there are some like on a competitive, like Dubai today is leading because of the facilities that the government is providing, the obstacles that are removing, and you can see from statistics that you have more than 400 nationalities today in the UAE, which never happened in maybe a lot of countries in the world. And this is only because of the investors' trust in the system. They have, it's like been tried, and it's a bulletproof that you put your money and you can take your money. And this is where the investor, they want to have this luxury of like this facility of easiness of transfer of money. Yes. And the good thing is that, and we experienced this, when we had one of the investments initially, like in the early 2019, one of the companies called Fadl, and this company, there is no like you cannot put it in any of the categories like in the commercial side. So in government of Dubai, there's a committee that they basically, whenever there is no like licensing for that specific type, they give you like can say a temporary and a draft license till they basically test your product if there is like a potential for it, and then they draw the law for it. So this is where you can see the difference between like what's happening today in Dubai and the following of the other nations. That yes, every country is providing their own services, but today I think the lead is Dubai is leading.
Mr. Maher.
Brother Araf really summed it very well. As an investor, you're looking for a few things. One, you're looking for funds. People will be able to support you. And if you want to establish a company, you're looking for a regulatory environment which is conducive for you to do business regarding the sectors you are at. Third, you're looking for security, both physical security and investment security. So the UAE has, of course, understand that, and they've been working on that for a very, very long time. So we start with regulation, and the first point will come automatically then, which is how do we make sure that people can come and open up their businesses and regulation will actually support that happen. Let me give an example on, for example, something to do with cryptos or something to do with virtual assets, blockchain and so forth. So we created VARA. We learned with VARA, which is virtual asset regulatory body that we started in Dubai. Similarly, Abu Dhabi have the same thing, which is very adaptive in nature. We looked at the best regulation in that space and we adopted that and we said, okay, what else we need to do? Something very importantly mentioned, for every single regulatory body, we have a committee established. So for example, blockchain, there is a committee established, which the constituents of the committees are the government bodies, both federal and local. Private sectors who are relevant, have expertise in this market from the international market, so that we bring them as well. And those who are technical background are very strong as well. So we create this committee to see what other regulations are required for people to come and establish companies in that space where we safeguard them and we also safeguard the public at the same time. And those changes, because we have a regulatory lab, i.e. a sandbox, you're able to test these regulations again and again, and you're able to amend them as things evolve, because the market is evolving constantly. Things are coming up. So you evolve based on making sure that both parties are safe and you don't stifle innovation, you make sure that innovation increases. So you take care of the regulation. When you take care of the regulation, that's you made it safer for people to come and invest, because now you're able to, your investment, you're able to repatriate if you want to, which is very well-known fact about UAE, and your also personal safety is there. Something I was mentioning to you, UAE, Abu Dhabi, the capital, is considered the safest country for the ninth year running globally. It's the #1 safest country. In the top 10, you've got 5 UAE cities are actually listed to be safest cities in the world. That tells you volume. You talk about thousands of cities over there. What you also require, if you're establishing a company over here, you require talent. So you want to make sure that the place is easy for people to come and for you to acquire talent. Yes, some of your operation will be done and outsourced in your respective hometown. I'm sure, and that happens, which is fine, because you want to make sure your economics are really there, conducive for you to sell your products or services. But you also require local talent over here. So what do we do that thing? 2 things are happening. One, because of the ease of regulation, because of ease of people getting working permits, people are able to come and establish over here their other things, so they're able to get work. Second, we're also making sure that the local talent that we have, we're skilling them and reskilling them. So you have access to both talent. And this is how we're making it easier for people to invest.
Anirudh, finally, although we don't have a Government of India representative here, as an Indian investor, and your father's also been an investor for the longest time, you run a family office, etc., and all the rest of it. What can the Government of India do to actually make this sort of cross-pollination significantly better than what has already happened? Not just in relation to the Gulf, of course, yes, because we are here, but also across other geographies. What is it that is holding investors back, from or doing whatever we have discussed over the last half an hour or thereabouts? And basically my question is, what are the impediments currently, and how can those impediments be done away with from an Indian regulatory standpoint?
It's a very wide encompassing question. I hope because the government has to deal with so many eventualities.
Yes.
Let's not forget that we're still living with the overhang of 1991.
Absolutely
India,
correct.
So we continue to have policies that are probably from the socialist era. They have done a lot. I think if I just think about the first time we wired in money or took money from a global LP into India, and the amount of steps that were taken to do that to where we are today, things have changed, hugely. You look at Gift City as one of the avenues to come into India. Again, it's a fairly new jurisdiction, but it's growing, and the government has really put their entire effort behind it. I think what they could definitely do, and I think in many ways Invest India, DPIT, they're all trying that, is going to ecosystems like Dubai and taking, let's just do a space tech, let's take the top 20 entrepreneurs of space tech in India and let's go and meet the ministry over here or meet the startups here. Take the top 25 agentic AI companies, semiconductor companies, and start doing more of that just to demystify. Because I think sometimes when I come and I speak about what's happening in India, you really see the eyes that go, oh my God, this is really happening. Because unfortunately, maybe we don't market ourselves well enough in places like this, that, hey, this is happening in India, it happened in India, it's happening in India. And I think that's where the government could do a bit more in promoting and possibly even sponsoring delegates of founders, maybe even investors. I think IVC is trying that as well. But bringing them to these ecosystems, it doesn't have to be that we have to get business. We just need to get to know each other. And once we get to know each other, I'm sure business will happen.
What about FDI regulations and Press Note 3 type regulations? You think we need to get away with get over them now? Because there's an Indian audience, which is why I'm asking you. It is a relevant question.
India lives in a very interesting neighborhood, right? But I think if you look at the effort done by the Prime Minister, and when you look at the relationship with the Gulf, I don't think it's ever been as strong as it is today, right?
Yes.
And there's huge amount of respect, both not just in the polity, but even within the professionals within the government, as well as founders and investors. There's a huge amount of work already happening on both sides of the border. We just need to strengthen this further, and like we've heard before, we have to just build better relationships and just demystify things for each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have time for just one, maybe two questions. If there are questions over here, I literally have 1 minute. If anyone would like to raise a question, please raise your hand, stand up, identify yourself and ask your question and who you're asking the question of. Anyone in the audience wants to ask anything?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
It was a very great session, a lot of learning. I am Captain Govin actually. I own a shipping company and having a investment advisory where we are raising capital and looking for the good investors. Thank you, panelists, with very good insight. And
please ask your question.
Anirudh, my question is to you is that India, of course, is a 1.5 billion populations with the huge GDP in terms of numbers. If you talk about growth, etc., is okay. What I see the investment which we are taking into India is very superficial at this point of time, like with the tech startups, mainly to Swiggy, Zomato, or platform as service or SaaS. What we see the sleeping giant is in the rural India, where 70% of India is still not been kind of roped into the consumerism economy. And that is being left behind.
So what's your question? I'm running out of time.
My question is that how the GP, as a GP, you look at into exploiting that area, and if you are seeing any kind of investments leading to that actually. So the investment has to flow inside the route actually. The route is India and rural India.
Fair enough. Okay, Anirudh, that question is for you.
It's a great question. First of all, I would not look at exploiting that part of the country, but we have to understand very clearly that rural India has many Indias inside it. Right? India has India Cat A, Cat B, Cat C. They have rural Cat A, Cat B, Cat C. It's fantastic to think about reaching out to this 50-60% of India that lives in rural India, but you have to understand the cost of doing business there is extremely high. So I don't think every startup can address it, and many people have tried, and they've recognized that sometimes there is actually systems over there that have been in existence for decades and centuries, that when you tinker with them, you start creating more problems than the one you're solving. So as far as we're concerned, as of now, we're actually more interested in India Cat A and looking at premium services and premium products to sell to the top 6% of India, which is roughly about 100 million people,
yes.
which is equal to probably the middle class of Europe at the moment. These people have an annual spending capacity of $15,000 or more annually, which I think has a huge potential, huge margins, and we're really, really focusing on that from point two.
Okay, we are over time, ladies and gentlemen. Please give my panel a very big round of applause. They've been very, very good.
Thank you to all of our speakers, and I'd like to once again request you all to please come together for a group photograph as well. That being said, we'll also set the stage for our next discussion coming up in just the next couple of minutes. But right now I'm going to request our speakers to please step forward. We'll also capture that in the form of a group photograph. Well, that one's turned out to be a dynamic discussion, if I may put it that way. And we managed to gather some very interesting nuggets of insights from all of our speakers. So with that, I'd like to thank all our speakers, and Aman, thank you so much again. With that, let's set this